have often dreamed.
What's up guys, it's Most of the Best, and I have to make a confession. Although this might already be obvious if you look at my channel, but I have somewhat of a fondness towards Disney. Now, I'm not trying to out myself as a Disney adult, but I do have a sweet spot for Disney movies, specifically those made by Walt Disney Animation Studios. I love animation, and for over 100 years now, Disney has been a primary innovator and mover in this medium. And you know what? I like talking about it. That brings me to this video. Truth be told, your mileage may vary on whether the movies I'll be talking about here are actually underrated, but the main criteria for this list is that I feel like talking about certain movies, and I think I have something worth saying. So what this video consists of are movies that I have grown to appreciate more and more, listed in no particular order. So with that said, let's get to it.
Maybe we should just take the bus.
He's fine.
What better movie to start with than one that completely violates the rules I've already set up? But you know what, when else am I going to talk about this movie? So yeah, Onward is Pixar, not really Disney as in Walt Disney Animation Studios, but I still think that this movie gets ragged on too much. Perhaps a large part of what causes this movie's reputation is that it came out at a very unfortunate time. Right after it hit the theaters was when everything got shut down due to COVID, and the movie ended up bombing for reasons that were entirely not its fault. But even considering that, I've still seen a lot of negativity for Onward.
I call it the light bulb.
The movie's premise is basically that this is a magical world where, because of technology, people have forgotten about magic. They live in a world similar to our own, but one full of mythical creatures that are unable to perform their mythical traits. The movie's core duo is Ian and his brother Barley. Their dad died before Ian was born, and the movie's plot revolves around them trying to use magic to revive him for 24 hours. It was originally for Ian's sake, but it ends up being for Barley's sake as he needed it more for his own closure. The whole movie centers around Ian and Barley's relationship, and that's what I like the most about it. Ian and Barley have their own challenges. Sometimes their relationship is strained, but ultimately they always have each other's backs. Ian spends the whole movie wanting to meet his dad, and Barley spends the whole movie helping Ian. But Ian's character arc has him realizing that the memories he wanted to have with his father already existed with his brother. Ian lets go of his own desire to allow Barley to have that one last moment with his dad that he always wanted.
I never had a dad, but I always had you.
I suppose the reason why I'm partial to this movie is that it reminds me a lot of myself. Not to get too personal, but I have a couple of siblings and they're all older than me. I didn't grow up without a father like Ian, but I still see a lot of myself in Ian. His relationship with his older brother reminds me of my relationship with my brothers. Sometimes Barley tries too hard, but his heart is always in the right place. Sometimes Ian isn't too nice. He gets frustrated, but he knows his brother is always there for him. It's sweet, and it's the main thing that comes to my mind when I think about this movie. But one of the more criticized aspects of Onward is the world. It is very contemporary and very similar to our world, which means it isn't necessarily very interesting or inspired. I understand that criticism well enough, but I also think that's kind of the point of the world. It's supposed to be very similar to our world, but with a very different history. I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with it, because restoring magic to the world is one of the goals of the movie's plot. If you notice, a lot of Pixar's movies are like this, playing with familiar settings or concepts in unique ways to tell a story. If we're making comparisons, I think the world of Onward is way more interesting than Elemental, but also less interesting than something like Zootopia, which I know isn't a Pixar movie, but still.
Today.
Also, somewhat unrelated, but there's a manga series out there called Witch Watch. It just got an anime adaptation, and the series has a similar premise to Onward. I didn't really have an organic way to incorporate that into the script, it just came to mind and I wanted to say it. But hey, Witch Watch is really good, and maybe you should check it out. Anyway, that's what I think about Onward. The movie didn't have a lot of chances, but I still look back on it fondly. It's not Pixar's best movie, but it's still a heartwarming and fun time.
Dark was the night when our tale was begun on the docks near Notre. Shut it up, will you? We'll be spotted!
Hush, little one.
The Hunchback of Notre is one of the biggest reasons why I wanted to do a video like this in the first place. There's so much depth to this movie that completely went over my head the very first time I watched it, and I want to be able to draw attention to that. Now obviously, the movie is based on the novel of the same name by French author Victor Hugo. It's a very famous novel, but the movie has quite a few differences from it. A big one is that Frollo and the Archdeacon are separate characters. Frollo holds a completely non-clerical role while the Archdeacon serves as the movie's heart, like a moral authority. There are also quite a few other differences regarding the major characters and how the story goes. Now, I often see these differences highlighted in discussions of the movie. It's understandable, but I also don't think it's often that interesting. As an adaptation, the movie can be judged on its own merits and not just on how well it adheres to the source material. So with that said, I'd like to get on to one of the most interesting parts of the movie, and that's Claude Frollo himself.
The world is cruel. The world is wicked. It's I alone whom you can trust in this whole city.
For a Disney movie, Frollo is so interesting, both as a character on his own but also as a villain. The most important thing to understand about Frollo is that he is very devout and sees himself as very righteous. He has a disgust for the things he sees as unrighteous, and in this movie, that's mainly the gypsies. Frollo wants to purge all gypsies from Paris, and the movie starts off with him capturing some of them as they were trying to make passage into the city. But when one of them flees, Frollo chases and murders her in front of the great cathedral, Notre Dame. And as penance, Frollo raises our protagonist, Quasimodo.
Dance la Esmeralda.
As many people have noted, Frollo is terrifying because his villainy is realistic. Frollo struggles between his devotion and what he really desires. His infatuation with Esmeralda is a core driver of his actions. In one breath, Frollo addresses her as a sorceress who's destined to perish in hell, but then his actions show the depth of his lust for her. During his signature song, Hellfire, Frollo specifically asks for Esmeralda to be removed from his life. And you know what? His prayer is answered. A guard comes and tells Frollo that Esmeralda, whom he'd been pursuing, had escaped the cathedral she was trapped in. But instead of recognizing this chance to move on with his life, Frollo strengthens his resolve that Esmeralda will either belong to him or no one else.
I'll find her. I'll find her if I have to burn down all of Paris.
Now I want to pivot to talking about the religious symbolism in this movie. Unlike most other Disney movies, The Hunchback of Notre Dame, its main setting being a church, is a lot more straightforward about its Christian imagery. The song, Hellfire, begins with a procession of priests chanting the Confiteor in Latin. If you don't know, the Confiteor is a confessional prayer. When one recites this prayer, they are acknowledging that they have sinned, both to God, the Virgin Mary, and to all the angels and saints. The prayer is an acknowledgement of one's own faults, and what I think is brilliant is that this prayer is juxtaposed against Frollo's own beliefs about himself and his righteousness. Frollo's own words play up his righteousness, presuming his own purity and that he's not like the common people, while the Latin in the background is meant to be a thorough recognition of your weaknesses and imperfection.
Maria, you know I'm so much purer than the common, vulgar, weak, licentious crowd.
Later in the song, the Latin phrase that gets chanted is mea culpa, which literally means my fault. But Frollo spends that whole section deflecting blame. He blames Esmeralda for being there to tempt him. He even blames God himself.
He made the devil so much stronger than a man.
I also find it interesting how the song ends with Frollo asking God to have mercy on him and Esmeralda. The Latin phrase that accompanies these words is Kyrie eleison, which means, Lord have mercy. Throughout the song, it was as if Frollo was directly denying and opposing the words of the Confiteor, but now his words are close to the Latin. I wonder if the Latin here is meant to be a representation of Frollo's thoughts, or if it is being chanted in anticipation of the destruction Frollo will soon bring to Paris. There's also a lot of meaning to the way in which the film portrays the great cathedral of Notre Dame herself. The cathedral doesn't feel like it's just a setting in this movie, but instead it's a character in and of itself. The opening scene of the movie has the cathedral peak above the clouds, which I think is clearly meant to represent Notre Dame's connection to heaven. The cathedral is personified in the movie by the Archdeacon. After Frollo murders Quasimodo's mother, he tells Frollo that his sins have not been hidden, but instead that Notre Dame has been watching him the whole time. The church not only gives solace to those like Esmeralda, but it also stands in judgment of those like Frollo. In fact, at the movie's climax, Frollo's fate is dealt not by Quasimodo, Esmeralda, Phoebus, or any of his other victims, but by the cathedral itself. Like I said, there's so much to this movie, but unfortunately the movie has a major weakness. One that everybody, including myself, have complained about, and yeah, it's the gargoyles.
What are you saying exactly?
I understand why the gargoyles are in this movie. It's rated G, and if it wasn't for the gargoyles, there wouldn't be a whole lot of time for levity. It's just that I think they could have done better, or at least portrayed the gargoyles in a way that didn't clash so heavily with the parts of the movie they aren't in. They could have at least spared us this dumb song.
No question of she's gotta love a guy like
George, I'm afraid I'm gonna have to ask you to leave.
There's certainly more that I can say about the Hunchback of Notre Dame, but I feel like this section of the video is already getting pretty long. Like I said in the intro, my appreciation of this movie has only grown over time. I think it has brilliant storytelling, and I hope I was able to help you see some of that.
Back when the world was new, the planet Earth was down on its luck.
You know, many years ago, when I first watched Hercules, I was so disappointed. Honestly, I thought that this movie was mediocre at best and just kind of bad at worst. This was an opinion I felt pretty firm in, that Hercules was the worst movie of the Disney Renaissance. But then, very recently, I just happened to catch the movie again, on cable TV if you can believe it. Yes, I still have cable. And I thought it was good. In fact, I thought that the movie was so good that I wondered why I even disliked it in the first place. And yeah, I said in the last section that the Hunchback of Notre Dame was one of the biggest reasons why I wanted to make this list, and Hercules is another one of the biggest reasons. My thoughts on this film have changed quite a bit.
Though honey, it may seem impossible, that's the gospel truth.
But first things first, Hercules is obviously based on Greek mythology. The gods live on Mount Olympus, the movie has Zeus, Hera, the Titans, and so on and so forth. But don't come into this movie expecting it to be accurate when it comes to the beliefs and stories of the ancient Greeks. In a way, I think that this story wears its creative liberties on its sleeve. It's very much not trying to be a documentary. Seriously, look at this character drinking from a straw. What's that cup made out of? Is it ceramic? What's the straw made out of? The ancient Greeks didn't have plastic. I mean, even the main character is called Hercules here, which was the name the Romans called him. The Greeks called him Heracles, although maybe that couldn't be abbreviated as well.
Young Herc was mortal now.
Maybe we should call him Hercules.
Herc was on a road.
But anyway, the film's story, no surprise, centers around Hercules. Hercules is the son of Zeus and Hera and was born on Mount Olympus as one of the gods. But through the scheming of Hades, our antagonist, Hercules was made mortal. When he becomes of age and learns about his origin, he sets out on a journey that will prove himself worthy to return to Mount Olympus.
I feel like I really don't belong here.
As I'm writing this script, the words hero's journey come to mind, and that's a good way to look at it. The story of Hercules is a hero's journey, and an effective one at that. Hercules is a very endearing character. His immense strength means that he was always the odd one out. He just wants to know where he belongs, and in the end he gets his answer. He stays with the one he loves and lives his life as a human.
I finally know where I belong.
The plot of the movie is just solid. The only thing I can see to dislike about it is that maybe it can be said to be pretty basic? Maybe. But at least on that point, I don't have any issue with the movie.
No man is worth the aggravation. That's ancient history, been there, done that.
Something I did say way back in that Disney Renaissance video was that the soundtrack of Hercules is mediocre, and that the only good song is Zero to Hero. Well, suffice it to say, but the overall soundtrack of the movie has grown on me immensely. Any song led by the Muses is great. I've warmed up to Danny DeVito's song, and the song sung by Megara, I Won't Say I'm in Love, is also great. So the soundtrack is great, but something I actually do remember not liking about the movie was the animation. When I first watched the movie, I couldn't help but notice that the characters weren't drawn the way they are in older Disney movies. I found some expressions to look awkward. I suppose that's just a function of the art style. When I think about it, Disney movies throughout the 90s didn't all look the same. They had a variety of ways to draw the characters and differed in how they use colors and so on and so forth. Despite my interest in the medium, I'm not an animator, and so I can't really go into the technical aspects as much. What I can say is that Hercules does look great, and its visual style has grown on me like everything else. If I can offer any analysis, I'd like to point out how the film uses colors. When the gods are in Mount Olympus, they glow brightly. The humans don't glow, but they still have a certain vibrancy in them. When Hercules temporarily loses his powers close to the movie's climax, he starts looking quite discolored, like a lot of life has been sucked out of him. And when Meg actually dies, she looks very gray. Maybe there's a connection here to Hades, whose skin is a bluish gray, so that's an interesting detail.
Aren't we forgetting one teensy-weensy but ever so crucial little tiny detail?
I own you!
Oh yeah, and you can't talk about Hercules without mentioning James Woods' performance as Hades. I feel like this is a universally praised part of the movie. Even to people like me, back when I didn't like the movie, I still thought that Hades was great. It was surprising for me to find out that Hades' character wasn't written, originally, with James Woods in mind, but they rewrote his character to match the way that James Woods was playing him, a fast-talking schmoozer.
We dance, we kiss, we schmooze, we carry on, we go home happy. What do you say? Come on.
He really is a highlight of this movie. Every scene he's in is pure gold. Also, and this is a bit of a side note which I once again couldn't find a way to bring up naturally, but on rewatching the movie, I thought that Hermes had to be a blatant celebrity insert, just because his design stands out so much, and guess what? Hermes was played by Paul Schaefer, and just looking at photos, the inspiration is obvious.
Gone, babe.
If you asked me 1 year ago today what I thought of Hercules, I would say that the movie was not good, and that I didn't like it. If you asked me 3 months ago, those would be my same thoughts. But now my opinion has changed to the extent that I don't know what turned me off in the first place. I'm not gonna start calling Hercules my favorite Disney movie from the 90s, but it's a solid one for sure.
Yes, indeed!
Ain't got time for messing around, and it's not my style.
I want some grandkids.
This old town.
The Princess and the Frog is such a nostalgic movie. Unlike the other movies here, I actually did watch this one in my formative years. I remember seeing the movie in theaters around the time it came out. But the movie is also nostalgic because it feels like a swan song to a time that has now passed. Technically speaking, The Princess and the Frog wasn't the last traditionally animated movie from Disney. That title goes to Winnie the Pooh from 2011, but the movie does feel like the unofficial end of an era. During the 2000s, Disney spent some time trying to reinvent itself. After the days of the Disney Renaissance, the studio was trying to find a new direction, something that could stick. Evidently, they did find what they were looking for, but in light of that, I like seeing The Princess and the Frog as the last of what the Renaissance era Disney had to offer. The movie gives us a very unique spin on a familiar fairy tale. Our heroine is Tiana, and our deuteragonist is the handsome Prince Naveen. Tiana's dream and overarching goal is to open the restaurant that her father wanted to start before he died. Prince Naveen's goals are less clear, at least on the outset. He starts the movie basically as a freeloader. He lives off of his parents' wealth, doing whatever he wants with little regard for the world around him. Because his parents cut him off, he plans to marry into a rich family to keep living his lifestyle. Prince Naveen's goal gets him turned into a frog through the voodoo of Dr. Facilier. And through this, he meets Tiana, who ends up becoming a frog too. And the rest of the movie has both Tiana and Naveen mature as they realize that there's much more to life than the narrow-minded visions they started with.
Tell you what you find, baby. Love will grant you peace of mind. You your daddy's daughter. What he had in him, you got in you. You got it.
Interestingly, Prince Naveen's realization gets foreshadowed in his earlier interaction with Dr. Facilier in Friends on the Other Side. During the song, Dr. Facilier proposes to both Naveen and to his servant Lawrence that they can get the lives they dream of. But when you look at both Naveen and Lawrence's expressions before shaking his hand, Lawrence is very eager, but Naveen seems unsure and hesitates. It shows that Naveen, though he doesn't know it yet, senses that there's more to life than being surrounded by luxuries and women.
I'll just have to leave a string of broken hearts behind me.
However, the fact that Tiana spends a significant portion of the movie's runtime as a frog is a point of contention for many. I can understand why people feel that way, but the most I can say in response is that I don't mind. I know it isn't the most insightful response, but it just doesn't bother me, especially since them being animals is crucial to the movie's plot and characterization. It forces the characters to be together and allows them to grow closer in a way that isn't influenced by their physical appearance. Naveen doesn't see Tiana as just another woman to woo, but he sees Tiana for who she really is, and that's who he falls in love with. Tiana is also allowed to see the roses, and that there's more to life than fulfilling her father's dreams. Not that doing that is a bad thing, but she should also consider what she needs, just like her father did.
My daddy never did get what he wanted. But he had what he needed.
There's also a lot to be said about the movie's setting. I love this movie's setting. I'm from New York, so what I'm about to say may not hold too much weight, but this movie feels so southern. The way the characters speak, the music they play. I love the opening song, Down in New Orleans. Overall, the movie makes New Orleans and its surrounding areas look so interesting. Again, take it with a grain of salt as a guy who lives in Brooklyn, but I can see the effort that was put in for an authentic feel.
Oh, that's the sweetest going round. Catch it down in New Orleans.
With all that being said, it's unfortunate. As of the time I'm making this video, it's been nearly 16 years since The Princess and the Frog came out, and 14 years since Winnie the Pooh. There have been sprinklings of some traditional animation, rumors of 2D animation being considered, but aside from that, it's all been CG. Of course, you can't predict the future, but if The Princess and the Frog ends up being the last or one of the last Disney movies of its kind, then I can at least take solace in this era of Disney going out with a bang. It's a great movie with a whole lot of heart.
See this palace? Everyone in it is at my command. Check this out. Butler, chef, theme song guy.
Oh yeah!
This seemed to be an appropriate movie to end with, because even though I included it on the list, it's kinda difficult to talk about this one the way I did the other movies here. Because of that, you can consider this as more of an honorable mention, to even out the list with 5 movies.
Hey, wait a second. 5 isn't it?
Before I made this list, my only exposure to this movie's world and characters came through The Emperor's New School, a spin-off TV series.
To destroy him, right?
I remember watching that show a lot as a kid, but I never saw the movie, which kind of sucks because I also remember being confused about things in that show that would have been easily understood if I had watched the movie. I won't be getting into that though, because my point here is talking about the movie, but that's my own connection to the franchise.
No, he's got a point.
That being said, The Emperor's New Groove is still quite interesting on its own, especially since the movie we ended up getting was very different from what was originally envisioned. In fact, there's a whole documentary about it. The Emperor's New Groove was first envisioned as a musical that was initially titled The Kingdom of the Sun. There was a whole story written for it, music was written and composed, storyboards and voice work got done, but much of it ended up being scrapped and the movie was completely reworked into what we have today. And what we have today is, at its core, a lighthearted comedy.
Ha! Boom, baby!
The movie is set during the time of the Inca Empire. Well, it's technically set during that time, but there are so many anachronisms and inaccuracies that I noticed here. I think it might be even less accurate to its time period than Hercules. And that's just a movie. Don't even get me started with the show. But anyway, the film's main character is Kuzco. He's the emperor, and he gets turned into a llama by the villain. And so he has to travel with a commoner named Pacha so he can become a human again.
What are the chances of you carrying me?
Not good.
Yep, that's it. There's the story. I've generally tried keeping my movie summaries brief in this video because I don't want things to get dull, but in the case of this one, that's the whole story. Kuzco and Pacha go on this journey, Yzma and Kronk are trying to find them. There you go. The movie isn't long at all, and yet it's also slow-paced, and the stakes are extremely low. In a sense, I can feel the movie's troubled development by just watching it. It definitely feels like there was a lot more intended for these characters. But I also want to stress that what we do have isn't bad at all. Kuzco and Pacha bounce off of each other well as a duo. Pacha is a nice guy and Kuzco is completely insufferable, but transitions into becoming more, sufferable.
Let me guess, you have a great personality.
Honestly, Kuzco is such an awful person at the start of the movie that I don't even blame the villains. The guy desperately needed to be humbled. Pacha would be completely justified in not helping Kuzco at all, but his conscience won't let him abandon him. For that, Pacha is definitely my favorite character, and Kuzco does manage to grow a moral compass because of Pacha.
Get them!
Hey, I've been turned into a cow. Can I go home?
You're excused.
As for the villains, once again, Yzma and Kronk do play off of each other well enough. As actual villains, they aren't intimidating in the slightest, but as a duo in this comedy film, I love them. They're both big idiots in their own distinct ways. Kronk stands out the most though. That guy lives in his own world. Or maybe we're inhabiting his world.
Oh yeah, it's all coming together.
For a comedy like this, characters are a large part of what can make the movie work, and I'm glad to say that the characters here do work. The movie has good banter and can be pretty funny, like when it acknowledges that a part of its plot makes no sense, but just runs with it.
How did we, Kronk?
Well, you got me. By all accounts, it doesn't make sense.
Oh well.
While I do like this movie, there's a certain emptiness I feel from it too. The movie is enjoyable, but also shallow. There isn't much I think is worth diving into. The plot is basic, and it's not like the characters here are any more complex. I suppose that's what makes this movie more difficult for me to talk about. It doesn't feel like there's much of a point to The Emperor's New Groove. It doesn't have an overarching message, and I don't feel like it's trying to tell me anything. These may be strange comments since this video is supposed to be for the movies I think deserve more love, but that is how I feel. That's why it has an honorable mention status. I like it, but I wonder how a version of the movie closer to the original vision could have turned out. That being said, I just have to point out that this movie is beautiful. The animation feels so fluid in a way that's distinct from the other movies on this list, and the art style is also very appealing. I'm sorry I didn't put that in the script, but as I was editing, I couldn't help but notice. And speaking of that, look at how long this video is. I really wasn't expecting to be going past my Disney Golden Age video.
He's a hero who can please the crowd. A star is born.
And I guess that's it. There are definitely more movies I could have put on this list. There are more movies that I wanted to put on this list. But you've got to know where to end things and be concise. At least that's what I tell myself. Anyway, as always, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and hopefully you'll stay tuned for future videos I want to do. I don't make money here, but I do enjoy making videos. Well, see you later. Peace guys, I'm Moza the best.